this one. So again, good noon sa inyong lahat. And last time we cannot hear. Okay. Last time we just have discussed also the classification of vegetables. So before we proceed with the classification ng fruits and then ornamentals, then we will proceed with our next topic, with which is about photosynthesis and cellular respiration na. So when we speak of photosynthesis, I know this is very familiar sa inyo na lahat, no? I'll just... So makita man ninyo akong screen, no? You can see my screen.
Yes,
Okay. Okay. So when we speak of photosynthesis, what do we mean by that? Anyone? Yes, anyone? When we say photosynthesis, it is what? Who would like to answer? Dexter, Kizzy, Anne?
ma'am, kanang tawag ani. About sa plants food production, ma'am. Sa ilang nagahimo sila food sa ilang ano.
Yes, very good. Okay, so that's very good answer. So that's photosynthesis, no? It is actually the food making process in plants to make it short, no? And it is also known as an anabolic reaction. When we say anabolic, it means small molecules are combined and also involve endergonic, which means it stores energy, and it involves a carbon dioxide or CO2 requiring process, and technically uses light energy known as photons and water or H2O to produce organic macromolecules, also known as glucose. So actually we have a very important what do you call that, equation. So this is now the equation of photosynthesis that you always bear in mind, no? It is just the explanation of this technical definition is also shown in this equation, wherein carbon dioxide, plants use carbon dioxide. Of course, these are just, if you have chemistry before, I know you have, you will understand the equation, no? Kasi you need to stabilize the number of photons, electrons by each of side of the equation in chemistry, diba? So we have 6 carbon dioxide plus 6 water. Then that is with the help of the photons or energy from the sun, and also using chlorophyll, no? Kasi yung chlorophyll nag-absorb to make glucose, or known as the C6H12O6, and release 6 carbon dioxide. That's why it's very plants are very important, since plants it is not the only one who is capable of photosynthesis. You will know later why, but mostly that's why we need plants, kasi aside from they make their own food that become our source of food, they also emit oxygen after their photosynthesis, which means that animals like us, no, kita mga tao, we need oxygen for breathing. So, and also by other animals, not only humans. So that is how important plants, which are capable of photosynthesis. So where the photosynthesis take place. So I would rather want to, before I proceed with this explanation, diba, I have shown you or posted a video regarding photosynthesis. So let's watch first before we go back to this explanation. So I just have posted, I guess, here. So we start this one. Can you hear? Madungog ba ninyo? Hello, can you hear?
And energy. The chemical process by
Yes,
which
ma'am.
plants use these resources to manufacture glucose, the building blocks of plants, is called photosynthesis. In the process, oxygen gas is produced as a byproduct. The energy for photosynthesis originates in the sun and arrives at the earth as sunlight. This light has both a wave and a particle nature. Photons, which is measured as wavelengths.
Let's start.
They need inputs of carbon dioxide, water, and energy. The chemical process by which plants use these resources to manufacture glucose, the building blocks of plants, is called photosynthesis. In the process, oxygen gas is produced as a byproduct. The energy for photosynthesis originates in the sun and arrives at the earth as sunlight. This light has both a wave and a particle nature. The particles, or photons, are the smallest units of light. Photons oscillate along a path, which is measured as wavelengths. The light emitted from the sun contains photons in a wide spectrum of wavelengths, called the electromagnetic spectrum. Photosynthetic organisms use only a small portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, called visible light. Photosynthetic organisms contain pigments that facilitate the capture of wavelengths of light in the visible light range. The color of the pigment comes from the wavelengths of light reflected. Plants appear green because they reflect yellow and green wavelengths of light. Red and blue wavelengths of light are absorbed by these pigments and provide the energy that is used for photosynthesis. Within eukaryotic photosynthetic organisms, also known as photoautotrophs, the chemical reactions of photosynthesis occur within plant cells in specialized structures known as chloroplasts. Photosynthesis consists of two sets of reactions, the light-dependent reactions and the Calvin cycle. Within the chloroplast are small disc-like structures called thylakoids, surrounded by a fluid-filled space called the stroma. The reactions that synthesize glucose, the Calvin cycle, occur in the stroma. The light-dependent reactions occur in the thylakoid. It is here that conversion of light energy to chemical energy is initiated. In most photosynthetic organisms, thylakoids contain pairs of photosystems, called photosystem 1 and photosystem 2, that work in tandem to produce the energy that will later be used in the stroma to manufacture sugars. The photosystems of the thylakoid consist of a network of accessory pigment molecules and chlorophyll, the molecules that absorb the photons of light. Within the pigment molecules, the absorbed light energy excites electrons to a higher state. Photosystems will channel the excitation energy gathered by the pigment molecules to a reaction center chlorophyll molecule. which will then pass the electrons to a series of proteins located on the thylakoid membrane. Photons of light strike photosystems 1 and 2 simultaneously. We examine what happens with the photons striking photosystem 2 first. The energized electrons are passed from the reaction center of photosystem 2 to an electron transport chain. The electrons lost by photosystem 2 are replaced by a process called photolysis, which involves the oxidation of a water molecule producing free electrons and oxygen gas. While this oxygen gas is a byproduct of photosynthesis, it is an important input to the cellular respiration pathways. As electrons pass through the electron transport chain, the energy from the electron is used to pump hydrogen ions from the stroma to the thylakoid, creating a concentration gradient. This gradient powers a protein called ATP synthase, which phosphorylates ADP to form ATP. The low-energy electrons leaving photosystem 2 are shuttled to photosystem 1. Within photosystem 1, low-energy electrons are re-energized and are passed through an electron transport chain where they are used to reduce the electron carrier NADP+ to NADPH. When the chloroplast is receiving a steady supply of photons, NADPH and ATP molecules are rapidly being provided to the metabolic pathways in the stroma. Therefore, the ATP and NADPH formed during the light-dependent reactions are used in the stroma to fuel the Calvin cycle reactions. The Calvin cycle consists of a series of reactions that reduce carbon dioxide to produce the carbohydrate glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. The cycle consists of 3 steps, the first of which is carbon fixation. In this step, carbon dioxide is attached to ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate, resulting in a 6-carbon molecule that splits into 2 3-carbon molecules. The second step is a sequence of reactions using electrons from NADPH and some of the ATP to reduce carbon dioxide. In the final step, ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate is regenerated. For every 3 turns of the cycle, 5 molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate are used to reform 3 molecules of ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate. The remaining glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is then used to make glucose, fatty acids, or glycerol. It takes 2 molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate to make 1 molecule of glucose phosphate. Thus, the Calvin cycle has to run 6 times to produce 1 molecule of glucose. These molecules can remove their phosphate and add fructose to form sucrose, the molecule plants use to transport carbohydrates throughout their system. Glucose phosphate is also the starting molecule for the synthesis of starch and cellulose. Plants produce sugars to use as storage molecules and structural components for their own benefit. By utilizing the energy of the sun, along with inputs of water and carbon dioxide, plants act as glucose factories. Photosynthetic organisms are the primary producers of glucose on the planet. They also produce oxygen gas as a byproduct, and thus serve as the foundation of life, providing food and oxygen for the complex food webs on both land and in the oceans.
So that's it. So before we proceed with the next is, which is about this is just to compare, no, yung mga, wait lang. Yung mga nag-message, hindi ko kayo maano ha, wait lang. Masagot, wait lang. So, another is, nagahang kasi ang nako. Presentation is the comparison between yung ating putol-putol ang tingog ya kasi mahina ang signal ko sa sorry, sa office. Wait lang ha. Wait lang. So by the way, on the last video presentation, it shows you the very complex process ng photosynthesis. If you notice here, I just presented you the formula. So hindi nyo alam, by this simple formula, it undergoes actually a very rigid process, no, that involves not only as you can see kanina, i-ano ko lang ha, i-watch ko ulit. So as you can see kanina, no, this involves light reaction, the Calvin cycle, and the electron transport, no? Tatlong process siya. So you will notice that that kanina sa formula na it needs sunlight, no, for it to undergo photosynthesis, but not all the time. Kaya when I ask you a question that does photosynthesis exist without sunlight? So what's the answer? Is it yes or no? Anyone? Kailangan ba og sun or sunlight bago mag-photosynthesis? Ha? Yes or no lang? Anyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes po.
Yes, but the answer actually could be yes or no. No, kasi it's not all the time na kailangan mo talagang mag-photosynthesis, no? So, kasi as shown here, it involves light reaction. So this is just the first step wherein it harvests the photons together with the carbon dioxide and water, no? But when you go to the Calvin cycle, it is already a light independent phase. So still photosynthesis will undergo with or without sunlight, no? But after it has collected the photons already. And then it goes to another light independent process. So the question is yes at saka no. Yes, in the sense that it needs during the light reaction phase, it needs light, but no in the Calvin cycle phase. So still photosynthesis even occur, no, in some organisms aside from plants, and you will know later. So now we have three types of photosynthesis actually, depending on three types of plants. Have you heard this before? The C3 plants, C4, and CAM plants? Nakadungog na mo ani before?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so how would na ni si Linrex? So ikaw mag-explain after this, Linrex, ha? Okay, I will.
Walay udyo, ma'am.
Wala, hinay lang ata.
Walay udyo, ma'am.
Wala, hapon.
Dili madungog, ma'am.
Ito kadungog, ma'am.
Hinay mo siya. But anyway, naaman siya ka ng, ano, isa na.
Sige mo lihok.
Okay, so let me just duha magud akong audio ba? So let me just go back to the photo here. Ay, wait lang. Sorry. Okay, so as you can see here, we have three types of plants, diba? You can hear me now? Okay, so sorry, mahina lang ang audio, but you can go back to the link next time. But the subtitles are, subtitles ba tawag nito? Meron naman siyang mga words na that is exactly what is being explained naman on what is written in the screen. So there are three types of plants based on their photosynthesis adaptation. So most common plants undergo ang normal talaga C3. So lahat ng plants are C3. But there are plants na C4 like the corn, no? So C4 kasi meron siyang bundle sheath cells and yung kanina yung structure niya which makes it na mag undergo ng photosynthesis which is different from the C3, no? And these are their adaptation para ma-cope up yung medyo undesirable environment, minsan pag walang oxygen or minsan walang light. And another type is yung mga cactus, since they are very dry, in a very dry environment, halimbawa na siya in the desert, no, in the desert, in the desierto. So the crassulacean acid metabolism plants have they don't, kasi nga mainit masyado sa desierto, they don't open their stomata during day kasi gusto nila mag-conserve ng water. So they only open it through nighttime. So anong nangyayari, ang carbon dioxide makasulod lang sa stomata or sa plant cell during night. And that's the time na pagka daytime, baliktad siya, no? Kumpara sa C3 at C4. And that's the time, once na na CO2, that's the time pagka daytime, kay close man ilang stomata, diha pa sila mag-undergo ng Calvin cycle, no? So that's the difference between the three. So if you have questions or more clarifications about these three types of photosynthesis, then you can just go back, or anytime you can ask me question. So now going back here sa ating discussion, so we will just where does photosynthesis takes place. So we have shown in the video kung saan it will, of course, in the leaves, no? Kasi nandoon yung ating ang ating gases or oxygen will get inside the leaves through the stomata or the stoma, and in this green chloroplast, the chloroplast A and B will be the one responsible in absorbing the photons or the energy from the sunlight. And so this is mainly in the mesophyll. So we have the so-called autotrophs, no? Meaning they produce their own food, no, to produce glucose. And these are basically all plants. And this is called photosynthesis, and mainly occur, of course, in the leaves through the stoma or pores and the mesophyll cells. So the stomata, it looks like this. It's actually a pore in a plant's cuticle through which human water, gases, and oxygen are exchanged between plant and atmosphere. So kanina sa video nakita niyo paano yun nangyayari. And they are usually found underside of the leaves or nasa baba. Mas maraming stomata. And then this is the mesophyll cell. We have the cell wall, the central vacuum, the nucleus, and the chloroplast. So the photosynthesis occurs in these cells. So this is the chloroplast where photosynthesis takes place. We have the outer, inner membrane, stroma, and thylakoid and granum. So if we run out of time, you just go back to the link if you have more questions and clarification. No, and these are thylakoids stuck together and connected. So ito yung thylakoid in a very closer version, and these are the grana make up the inner membrane, no? And why are plants green? Because of course, the green pigment chlorophyll that makes it green, no? It's located in the thylakoid membranes, and the chlorophyll has the magnesium ion in the center based on its chemical structure. And these chlorophyll pigments are the one which harvest energy or photons by absorbing certain wavelengths. So now remember nyo kanina, we have visible lights in these pigments from blue, red, yellow. So these are the 420 nanometer to 660 nanometer. These are the nag-absorb ng mga wavelengths. So I will discuss you further later about wavelengths. No, you just next time, if we run out of time, you just kanang i-remind ko. And plants are green because the green wavelength is reflected and not absorbed. No, among all colors like blue to red, no, yeah, blue, yellow, red, and there are even UV. So yung UV hindi na masyadong important, no, but they are very good in disinfection. Kaya gumagamit tayo ng UV. And if makita nyo ang wavelengths kanina, there's a lot of explanation on that, but I'm going to get back on that. So it's the only green color that it's not absorbed by the plants. Kaya ang tanaw nato sa leaves are green because the green color is being reflected. So this is the chlorophyll A with the magnesium ion at center, and so ito yung wavelength na sinasabi ko. These are shorter waves. So ito yung medyo for disinfection, and even hindi pwedeng parang makakause siya ng radiation sa tanim, sa organisms. And the long wave, These are the visible lights ng mga colors na nakikita natin. So, how do chlorophyll absorb, no? Blue, violet, and red light. So, they absorb, of course, yung violet and blue are absorbed, then the green wavelength, and also then the yellow and orange. So, yung violet at blue talaga ang kanyang mas na-absorb. So, what causes the leaves to change in colors during fall if it is a deciduous plant? So in addition also to the chlorophyll, meron din tayong mga ibang pigments. We have yung mga yellow na pigments are anthocyanins, anthocyanins and carotenoids, sorry. During the fall, these green chlorophyll pigments are reduced. So pag nawala na yung chlorophyll, so mag-show na yung carotenoids like the red, orange, and yellow. And we also have anthocyanins. Ito yung mga pigment which have the red and purple color. So we have the so-called redox reaction or reduction oxidation, no? So it is the transfer of one or more electrons from one reactant to another. So when you say oxidation, nag-loss siya ng electrons, but reduction is the gain of electron. Just remember, when we say reduction, supposedly i-reduce niya, no? But it's the opposite, the gain of electrons. And oxidation, therefore, the opposite is the loss of electron. So in the oxidation reaction, also the loss of electrons from a substance or the gain of oxygen. So this is what happened to produce glucose. This is called as the oxidation reaction. And in the reduction reaction, it is from reducing carbon dioxide to glucose. So that's the gain of electrons to a substance or the loss of oxygen. So why do cells use for energy? So the plant cells use sunlight because it's the ultimate energy for all life on Earth. No, even humans, we get energy from the sun through vitamin D, no? It activates us. And plants store energy in the chemical bands of sugars in plants, and chemical energy is released as adenosine triphosphate during cellular respiration. But we're going to talk about more on cellular respiration. So the ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate, and it is composed of what we call nitrogen bases, adenine or the 5-pentose sugar, ribose, and 3 phosphate groups, while the last phosphate group is bonded with a high energy chemical bond and broken to release energy or cells to use. So, and then phosphate from ATP is removed, breaking the last phosphate bond from ATP, thus releasing the energy cells for use in the form of adenosine diphosphate to produce a free phosphate group. So this is ATP is the very high energy phosphate band. And this free phosphate can be reattached again to ADP para ma-reform na naman siyang ATP process called as phosphorylation. So this is again what happened in the video that I have shown you. So this is the overall phosphorylation, wherein energy from the sunlight or from food is available, the energy available for cellular work and for chemical synthesis are being reused through phosphorylation. So the force of photosynthesis has been discussed already in the video. So again, we have the light reaction or light dependent reaction. So ito yung sinasabi ko, yung sagot sa tanong ay yes at saka no. So when we say in the light reaction or light dependent reaction, nagproduce siya ng photons in the form of ATP and NADPH from the sun, no? And in the second part, the Calvin cycle or light independent reaction, ibig sabihin hindi na niya kailangan ng light. So it's also called the carbon fixation or C3, no? And it uses ATP and NADPH from light reaction para gumawa na ng glucose. So yun yung dalawang parts ng dalawang phases ng photosynthesis. So this light reaction are done in the thylakoid membranes during the light reaction, wherein there are two possible routes for electron flow, we have the so-called cyclic electron or non-cyclic electron flow. In the cyclic electron flow, it occurs in thylakoid again, but uses the photosystem 1. If you remember in the video, this has been discussed, no? In the photosystem 700 reaction center, yung chlorophyll A uses electron transport chain ATC or ETC, and it generates ATP only. So from ADP to phosphate, naging ATP siya. So if maybe you'll be wondering why, bakit may chlorophyll A at saka chlorophyll B? Because of its structural differences lang naman. But mostly yung chlorophyll A ang yung usually makikita ninyo dito sa photosystem. This is a cyclic electron flow, no? This is what happened in the photosystem 1, and ATP produced by electron transport chain. So yung pigments absorb light energy and excite the electrons of chlorophyll to produce ATP. And in the non-cyclic electron flow, it also occurs in the thylakoid, but it uses the photosystem 2 both and photosystem 1. So P680 reaction center in the chlorophyll A, as well as 700 in, and as also the ETC, to generates oxygen, ATP, and NADPH. Okay, now in the non-cyclic electron flow naman, ito yung nangyayari. If you notice also, but nauna yung photosystem 2, ma'am, bago photosystem 1 in the whole flow. Kasi the scientists discovered first the photosystem 2 bago yung photosystem 1. Kaya usually yung kanyang mga we are less than 1 minute na. So maybe we will just continue with the next meeting. So here in this electron flow, the water is split in the photosystem 2, and wherein ATP is made, while the energy carrier and NADPH is made in